Hello and welcome back to Rehydrate. This season, we will be reading and discussing Liu Cixin's Death's End, the third and final part of Remembrance Earthpass series. This is Season 5, Episode 5, Fate's Choice, covering the second half of Part 3 and all of Part 4. We previously talked about the three-body problem and the Dark Forest and have hosts with varying levels of knowledge of the book and this series. My name is Dan and I've read the entire series.
This is Tim, and I've only read up to the current week's reading.
This is Amin, and I have also read up to the current week's reading, and also, along with Dan and Talia, and sometimes a special guest, I co-host the Rehydrate spoiler cast, where people who have read the entire series spoiled these sections by talking about the implications going forward. On last week's episode, we talked a lot about the fairy tales and a lot of speculation and assumptions about what they might mean. So for people who've read the books, you should go back and listen to that. Or if you have not finished and you're like Tim, once this is all over, you should go back and check that out. So that's Season 5, Episode 4, the spoiler cast. It's really illuminating.
Yeah, and I'll say, as a person who has read the books, I got a lot of good insight from both Priya and Talia about their kind of takes on some of the interpretations of the fairy tale. So I definitely recommend that episode to go back and listen to. And thanks again to them for bringing those points up. Also, in news about the show, so we're getting close to the end here of Remembrance Earthpass. So I've been putting together some thoughts and ideas for what the next season is going to look like. So we mentioned before we're going to have simultaneous seasons, and one of the seasons we're going to be running is that we'll be covering the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov, and it should coincide with the Apple TV show that's starting in about September. But it's only be covering the books, not covering the actual show, because I don't know how we haven't read the entire trilogy, only read the first part. So I don't know how they're going to break up the book or the show and the books and whatever. So I'm just going to stick to the book format for now. And we'll have more details coming on that soon, but it should kind of pick up almost immediately after we're done with this series. Okay, so let's go into the summary for this episode. And a note, this is the longest reading section of any of the shows so far. So there's a lot here. So bear with us. While the IDC all but gives up hope on deciphering the further meaning of the fairy tales, Chengxin and AA make a breakthrough after seeing their origami boat driven by a small piece of soap, curvature propulsion, the means of accelerating a ship to light speed by folding space and pulling it ahead. Newly inspired, the IDC gets back to work, and the next chance discovery is the meaning of Haerschigen Moschigen. It is thought to be a combination of the places in Norway, the mountain Helsigen, and the island Moschigen. They travel there and investigate a maelstrom that has been written about centuries ago by Edgar Allan Poe. They theorized that the inescapable nature of the maelstrom once you've crossed the threshold is meant to represent a black hole. This, coupled with the idea of the constant speed needed for the umbrella to work, is supposed to represent the speed of light, to come up with the idea for the Black Domain project. The Black Domain project would present a cosmic safety notice by enveloping the solar system in a reduced light speed black hole. This would present the solar system as non-dangerous since it could not be observed. However, others, including Chengxin and AA, consider it to be a prison from which humanity could never escape. The other plan put under consideration is the development of lightspeed ships, given the realization of curvature propulsion. But this plan quickly loses favor due to two major events. The first incident is a false alarm that is triggered to alert the population of an incoming dark forest strike. Humanity is sent into wild-scale panic, and those who have the means, without regard for safety of others, launch their personal spacecrafts into space, killing thousands. The second incident is what triggered the false alarm, the fact that trails are left from ships that utilize curvature propulsion, broadcasting danger of the civilization even more. The last plan is the continuation of the Bunker Project, a plan to develop large cities in space that would be shielded from the explosion of the sun. A scale test is done of the Bunker Project, where Chengxin encounters Thomas Wade once again. He urges her to give him control of the company to develop lightspeed ships, a task that Chengxin would not have the temperament to complete, given that it is banned. After consideration, she agrees under the condition that she has the option to reassume control if there's any threat to humanity. Wade reluctantly agrees, and Chengxin and AA enter hibernation. 60 years later, Chengxin is awakened from hibernation by Cao Bin, a former swordholder candidate. Upon awakening, she is astonished to realize that she is aboard an enormous cylindrical space city. Cao Bin takes her on a tour of the other space cities in the area, ranging from metropolitan to extremely poor, and even an abandoned city that's built around a manufactured black hole. She finally arrives at the space city run by her company and finds it under blockade. She meets back up with Wade to see a small-scale working experiment of curvature propulsion. Given the fact that the technology is outlawed, Wade has assembled a militarized force equipped with antimatter bullets capable of destroying the space city. Chung-Cheen is horrified by the development and is almost surprised when Wade keeps his promise to her and hands control back over, as she shuts down and disarms the soldiers. Wade is tried, convicted, and executed for his crimes against humanity, while Chung-Cheen and AA take their ship, Halo, to Jupiter to re-enter hibernation, until such time that the Dark Force strike hits the sun and they're able to see humanity hopefully prosper and live in the happiness in the era after the sun has been destroyed and humanity emerges from its bunkers. We'll just start jumping into some of the points of the episode. So first thing I had was I thought it was pretty interesting how written literature had pretty much disappeared from more of a century ago, and like now it's like all just like images, and that's sort of kind of happening in our current age. Like not a lot of people read books. Like myself, I'm even though I'm reading books here, I'm reading them on ebooks. I think people were kind of worried about when ebooks started to become a thing that old paper books were going to go away. But now it's like people mostly consume video content, via YouTube and TikTok and that kind of stuff. So it seems like a kind of a commentary on, maybe as Lisa and the author, kind of lamenting the the downfall of people reading literature. I don't know. Did you guys read it that way?
Yeah, I agree with you that I think it's just a small point he's making about how humanity has completely changed. I think he's sort of continuing the extrapolation from, the deterrence era humans. Even though it seems like we've reverted somewhat back from the completely feminized culture or so of the deterrence era, which is still kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly a little surprising to me that he does make this point here, because he does like talk about how like humanity has sort of reverted back in some ways. People aren't wearing basically TikTok clothes or something. Yeah, he seems to intimate that humanity has kind of like, I don't know, gone a little retro. The fact that narrative literature doesn't exist anymore is still a little surprising to me. You'd think that would be like one of the things that humanity would maybe try to, again, if they were going through this sort of like retro rediscovery phase, would try to bring back, but apparently not the case. So if you were concerned about the course of humanity and like how media and all that like sort of changes our brains and it destroys our attention spans, and this like reading, like the written word is the thing that's like most oft cited as like,
Yeah, it's like the anti-intellectualism of the current generation never reads anymore, right?
right, yeah, doesn't
Yeah.
read anymore and can't pay attention to anything and needs constant stimulus. So
And I also wonder how much of it is just a production issue. So if you're, well, I'm going to take this literally, but if you're printing books, distributing them across the universe is probably a lot harder than sending a packet with some images in it.
Yeah,
So,
and they talk about before like how paper is like so
yeah.
it's so like novel and ancient, and like no one has actual paper anymore.
well, I would never expect them to even have books, paper books anymore, but more like ebook.
Right.
Do news stories exist or articles or anymore?
Yeah, they talk a lot about like the information overload age, where like they, when a big like when the false alert happens, like they're just like bombarded with like information windows that are just like random videos, and like
Right.
they have like a hard time to kind of deciphering it. And there's no like guardian.uk article, right, that they're reading or whatever to actually like see what's actually happening. It's always just like they have to decipher all these different images that are coming at them.
Yeah, it could be more of a point about not the type of the way we're receiving information, but the curation of it. It's sort of the extreme
Yeah.
end of there being, like no curation and no source of truth for anything. You can get a zillion conflicting images at once, and I could see how that would mess with people's heads,
Yeah.
because we see it, happening right now.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think it's more of a social commentary, like, and he kind of just threw it in there. And like, it's been a common theme, like we can see it kind of progressing, throughout the series. So I just thought it's interesting. He brought it back up here specifically. The next thing that I thought he brought his personal experience into when describing the story was the situation when they're on during the false alert and they encounter the school children on the launch pad, and AA kind of gives them a tech job interview on the spot, like asking them like brain teaser questions to like let them into the ship. And I was like, as a person who's gone through tech interviews and given tech interviews, that is like kind of the worst kind of behavior of tech interviews. Like I don't think anyone likes those things unless they study them or memorize them.
Right.
But I've definitely encountered them and I hated them. And so it just really reminded me of that. And I was like, that has to be like leadership going through tech interviews to to put those questions in there. Maybe he likes them. I don't know. Tim, you're also have done a bunch of tech interviews. Have you encountered those kind of questions?
Yeah, well, I would hate that to be, for that to be my life and death
Yeah.
determiner. Just leave the stupid kids behind. But yeah, I guess it seems, like maybe it was just AA's, idea, like just to at least to like resolve this on the spot. It's like how a lot of tech interviews go. If you can't really like, you have no process of holistically evaluating this person in any sort of humanist way, you're just going to revert to, we just need to screen out people. So we're going to do it with, I mean, basically you're just screening out like who are the bad test takers rather than who is like
Right.
qualified or, to be on the ship, which obviously in this case, everybody's qualified to be in the ship. It's just I mean, it's one in a kind of a long line of, in this series where he is putting these hypothetical situations in front of the characters and
Hmm.
forcing them to make the hard decision. So I'm not really sure what the whole like point of this part was, in that like again it just seems to be a common theme.
Do you mean the job interview specifically part, or I mean like the false alert section in general?
Well, this one little scenario,
Oh,
this
I
one
see.
particular scenario, like it doesn't go anywhere really. It's just like it's not like these kids go on to become characters or anything like that, and
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
not part of the plot. He just can't seem to resist putting the hard decision hypothetical, wherever he can in the story.
Yeah.
I think the whole false alarm seems to be the apex of his criticizing of humanity for being panicky and flighty. Humanity in general just being this kind of like panicky, flighty race, and also with some like class commentary in there as well.
Yeah, I thought this section was very interesting because of that. 'Cause, yeah, it's the kind of the confluence of a bunch of events, like humanity kind of being easily scared by new technology, and then also like we've seen that before of kind of going against like the richer class, like the class warfare kind of aspect. But this really like solidified it into like one big event, right? Where the rich people are able to get to their personal spacecrafts,
Right.
and then they just like disintegrate the people without regard for their safety, just so they can get safe and get out of get off the planet in hopes to save themselves, even though there's not really a hope anyway, because they wouldn't be able to get far enough if the photoid really did come there and destroyed that sun at that time. Yeah, I thought the undertones there, or not even undertones, but like the themes of that thing was pretty interesting. And then the fact that based off of that event happening, that humanity then decides, like one of the reasons they decide against lightspeed research is that it's only going to be okay for the rich people, right? Rich people are only ones who afford this. It's kind of the same as the escapism in the past, where only like the elite class or the rich people will be able to actually escape out of the solar system. So they just like ban it for the entire world.
Yeah, it's easy to take this in a couple directions. You could see it as obviously a critique of like runaway capitalism, in that you're going to have this stratification, and then when time comes to have some, like, there is no overarching like authority or anything to like actually organize an evacuation. So you have a bunch of rich people all on their own, all acting independently, all on their own accord, with no real, no one like taking responsibility. Like there's no responsibility happening. Like there's no overarching organization to do this in a responsible way. So
Yeah.
you just have a bunch of rich assholes just inserting people as they in a panicky flight. And you could also take that like, is there also implicitly endorsement of a more authoritarian, overarching like world government in there? In this case, in a case like this, would you need something like that to like handle this, a mass evacuation in a responsible manner?
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's really possible, given the limitations of time, right? Because like the photoid comes in, they have no idea how long it's going to take for it to actually get, even after they detect it, like it's traveling at light speed, right? So how long is it going to take for that photoid to hit the sun? And then how long is it going to take the sun to actually destroy the earth? It's probably not possible to get all humanity off. And so we see like
Right.
later on that it took 60 years to get most people onto the bunker worlds as it is, like much less like an evacuation scenario where people just like mass panic and just don't have any regard for the safety of others that aren't them.
You could see this as a scenario where, like, yes, there's no time to organize a mass evacuation in any sort of equitable way. So yes, the only people who are going to be able to save themselves are rich assholes, but is that the only way we can, like, anybody would get off in time?
Yeah.
Is if everybody, you could just sort of, some people just have the capacity to respond immediately, and yeah, what their plan is from there, like, there probably isn't anything, so they probably fly off into space, and who knows what happens to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hope is that the rich people would put their resources and time and efforts into thinking about like a larger scale evacuation plan. Like, how could they get the most people off of the planet and to safety in such an event? But in reality, when it comes down to it, they just panic and
Yeah,
use their resources to save themselves, right? And I think
there's
this is
not.
sort of analogous to kind of to what people are talking about now with the private space travel with Bezos and Branson and even Elon
Sure.
Musk, using their resources to kind of just maybe save themselves. Like they talk about how they have more lofty goals for humanity and that kind of stuff, but the first people to take these
Yeah.
flights were Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, what their personal, what their personal ideologies are. Is that the forces of capitalism aren't really concerned with long-term planning. We see it with climate change, which is just kind of a disaster happening on a slower scale, but because
Yeah.
like, multinational corporations aren't just going to have a change of heart and then band together and to come together to solve climate change, because that's just not, like, they still have investors to report, to and the market to, like, their only purpose is to turn a short-term profit. So, like, the very
Yeah.
nature of a fragmented, mostly capitalized, individualized society isn't well equipped to deal with anything like this on, either on a large scale, and in either the near term or even like a short, like an extremely short term crisis, like, oh, there's a photoid coming to destroy our planet. Just going to be every man for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a counterexample, but the the biotech companies did come together to develop a vaccine to COVID like pretty rapidly. And I don't know if they had, more altruistic motives or whatever. I guess I initially thought that like they're kind of doing it, just for the betterment of humanity. But then I also read that like the Pfizer company in Germany now makes up like 0.05% of the German economy because of all the money they made for developing the vaccine. So I guess it wasn't so altruistic after all.
Yeah, they wouldn't do it out of the kindness of their hearts. you
Yeah,
know
but
well,
it seems like if there was a time to kind of for corporations to do stuff out of the kindness of their hearts, like that would be the time to for the better humanity.
well,
But
if the kindness of their hearts, also lines up with a profit motive, and now, like,
right,
and now it's a wonderful PR, move for them, because, like, these drug corporations, Pfizer in particular, are terrible in all sorts of ways pre-COVID, and the but if suddenly humanity, I mean, it's kind of like how Lucian, portrays humanity as being kind of fickle and their minds easily changed. Like, is the positive association with the vaccine going to just, like, be such a PR boost for Pfizer that people are going to turn a blind eye to everything else they do, from at least for a long time?
probably. But we also have to remember, like the three of us live in the United States where we're getting the vaccine for free, and that's not because Pfizer Biotech is giving
Right.
the vaccine away for free. It's because the US government paid for a bunch of vaccines for us. And there's vast inequality around the world of all these different countries, like not having access to the vaccine because they can't afford to just get them. I think like we as Americans, like we're probably like, yeah, more apt to say like, oh, they're a good company. They're giving the vaccine away for free, but they're not. Anyway, let's get back to sci-fi. Yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is the Bunker Project. I think the Bunker Project is a pretty interesting project, and it's interesting in that it can be accomplished with technology that we currently have, or that humanity at this point in the book currently has, right? But just at a larger scale. What I thought was funny is like when they did the scale model test of the Bunker Project, and like they have like the like the different asteroids that are representing the company, and someone even painted the giant red spot behind Jupiter, and they blow up the hydrogen bombs. It reminded me of like Doc Brown's like elaborate scale models in Back to the Future. It was like they didn't really do anything except for look cool, which is kind of, and I think during the experiment everyone kind of understood, that was kind of the point. It's just more for PR. Didn't really accomplish anything, but it doesn't remind me of.
Yeah, I think it was just to sell the project to humanity. Well, I think it kind of also serves as like the story, the sort of inflection point to introduce Wade into the story as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the ultimate point. I just thought like it seems like something humanity would do is like, hey, let's build a scale model, and we'll show people that it works.
Yeah, it's
Even though
probably still pretty expensive to do, and yeah.
yeah,
But
I mean, like those like moving those asteroids into place and like putting everything lining up to the model, like even though it doesn't yield any real results, like it's just for show basically. Humanity puts forward these three plans. Basically, you have the Bunker Project, which relies on current technology, and then based off of some of the research and ideas that are put forward by the Deciphering the Fairy Tales, they come up with the Black Domain Project, which is to reduce the speed of light throughout the solar system. So we live in sort of like a black hole, basically. They say like it should be safe to live in there because like we're above the the Schwarzschild radius where we wouldn't get sucked in, but it's still weird. And it seems like really, really difficult. They call it like God's engineering plan, because how are you going to reduce light throughout something the size of the solar system?
I forgot if they covered this detail, but like, where would you place them? Like, it seemed like it would have to be in the center. Like, it would have to be in like the center of like the sun
Yeah.
to not like with gravity and like turn the sun into a wobbly thing and almost have like not a trisolaris but a bisolaris situation going on.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, then if you like, how do you put it in the middle of the sun without it? I don't know, starting to eat the sun.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, this part was weird to me, but I did learn a lot about, because I'd read in magazines that people, they were able to slow down the speed of light by whatever, and he talks about it. But this was, I like how he explained why that was different from what they're trying to do. So he like actually put it in a science fiction realm using current science.
Yeah. I mean just the sheer enormity of the changing the laws of physics to broadcast that cosmic safety notice, I think that's super interesting, but it's also really confusing. I think that all the stuff about black holes and like light speed and like this, I think this section of the book gets like super scientific about some of the stuff that he's interested in. Putting our entire solar system in a black domain seems to be in that vein, and I don't fully understand how it actually work in practice, and I think no one does, right? Because at the most they're able to just get that one stable black hole that was surrounded by the ship, or not the by the city. The last part of the last plan that they come up with is the development of lightspeed ships that use the curvature propulsion that they kind of thought about based off of when they saw the boat going through the water using the soap. And that's a oft used meme on the Three Body Reddit, by the way. Like the people always post like a leaf with like ink on it getting pulled through it, or using a boat with soap. Yeah, so it's a very popular meme to post on the Three Body Reddit. But the dangerous part of it is that the light speed actually leaves a trail behind. It starts as a dot. It kind of travels throughout the path of the light speed ship. So humanity kind of shuts it down because that would obviously present a way for people to see that we have light speed ships, and then just probably attack us with a dark forest. And that's probably the reason that the Trisolarians, they kind of touched on this, but it was not obvious at the time that the Trisolarians, like when they left their planet, they didn't use light speed for a while. Until they were like a light year away, or I forget how long it was, but it was like they went on traditional propulsion for a long time, specifically because they didn't want to give away their location, or that's the theory anyway. They didn't want to give their location away. Given these three plans, I guess, do you guys have any strong inclinations like which path you would choose as a first approach of like the way for our civilization to continue past a theoretical dark forest strike?
I'd pick the light speed technology. That seems to have a lot of other implications, and it's just kind of cool.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I feel like you would just want light speed technology, for its own sake. I mean, I would do what humanity actually did and explore all of these options. I don't think you have to pick just one. The Black Domain project seems the hardest to achieve, and also kind of the most maybe depressing because like what does that mean? If I'm understanding it, then like light does not in the entire radius of this, like light does not behave as it once does and is now slower than it once was. So what does that mean for communication and computers, and how does that like can you have the level of technology?
Yeah, and the black domain is like pretty much like self mutilation,
Yeah,
right? Like yeah, I think things wouldn't work the way that we expect them. A lot of things are built around like the speed of light,
yeah,
right? And so like if that is reduced to a crawl, then a lot of things aren't going to work the way that they had, and we're going to kind of go back to more of an agrarian
yeah.
society, right?
Yeah, or well, it would be that. I mean, that would be something that would be interesting to explore in a whole book unto itself. Or
Yeah,
like on a macro scale or a larger scale, it would obviously be problematic because like information wouldn't move as fast in this. Even if you're slowing it down, it's still pretty fast. So like your communication systems or your computer, like I mean, I guess especially like computers wouldn't be as fast, but would they still be useful? Obviously you could still communicate and broadcast images and sound. It would just I don't know. Maybe it would all maybe all your entire media networks would just be small bubbles, like limited to cities, where within that city it would still be workable. You probably just couldn't crunch numbers or have computers as fast as you ever want them to be.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like back in the day, we used sound waves to connect to networks with
Right.
modems, right? They just used telephone lines
Yeah, which is much
to
slower.
basically sound waves. But now everything is fiber optic cable. So we're basically we would, this is a small section of
Yeah.
history, but like if you think about like those times 20 years ago or whatever it was, I think it'd be extremely painful to just in the matter of like information technology to go back to, such slow speed. And it would, the world would be much different for it. A lot of people pine for those days where, we weren't so overloaded by technology and like information was so accessible. I am not of that camp.
But aren't you nostalgic for the old dial up BBS days, Dan?
But I love checking them out now much faster. We can pass images and videos around. So like it was cool because it was novel, but like I wouldn't want to go back to those days of, slow transfer speeds.
Well, I mean, it would affect electricity too. It would affect turn of the century, turn of the 19th century, technology. And I don't know. Do you turn on your light bulb, but do you have to wait for it to turn on?
Yeah, you have to wait for the light to come out.
Yeah. Or is it still again? Like you could reduce, light's pretty fast. You could reduce it to 10% of its total light, and it'd still be pretty fast, by human perception. So maybe it
Yeah.
wouldn't be so bad. You'd just like be perpetually in like a 1920s level of technology. I don't know. You'd just be perpetually steampunk, maybe. I don't know. You'd have lights and this or that, but it'd be too.
So now you're selling the steampunk audience
Yeah.
on this idea.
But yeah, I mean, this whole black domain part, like I don't know if this comes into play in the rest of this, rest of the book yet. It's kind of another example of I think he just wants to like Lucius Shin wants to shove every scientific idea and concept that he ever,
Yeah.
ever dreamed of into this series. And I know at this point it seems like it's going nowhere. So
Do you mean the Black Domain project or the story?
the Black Domain project.
Oh,
Well, the story is another. Get to that when we get to the end of this, but it's
okay.
a weird place to me as well. But yeah, I mean, to your original question, I don't see any reason not to at least explore all three of these things. Like the bunker project will obviously buy you some time, and it seems like they've at least created some pretty cool cities. Man, like it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a terrible existence.
So you weren't persuaded by the arguments against light speed? Like you would try to probably press on despite the classist elements and and the potential like broadcasting of our.
Well, no, I'm divorcing the lightspeed tech, like from if you could do, there's nothing wrong with the technology in itself, if you could do
Hmm,
it that doesn't, in a way that doesn't endanger humanity, and the classist aspect is it's more the fault of capitalism rather than lightspeed technology itself. I would think
yeah.
humanity would at least want the option to, at least be able to make an escape if they needed to. But again, if it's impossible to develop it without creating too many signals, then yeah, I suppose it's very dangerous.
Yeah. So for myself personally, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here before, but my opinion would be, yeah, definitely go after the light speed and yeah, think about ways to make that safer. Either you move the acceleration outside of detectable system, detectable range, or the presumed detectable range if they could. Limiting ourselves to staying in a bubble is not going to be long-term sustainable for our race. Like we need to leave the system, and as close as like Trisolaris is, like we probably could get there. I mean, it was like what 4 light years away, right? And it took 400 years for them. So like ours, and we've already seen people leave the solar system, but they were kind of demonized for doing it, for escapism and for the stuff that happened during the Battle of Darkness and that kind of stuff. But I think that's kind of the long-term survival plan for our species, is to leave our solar system and explore the universe more. That's the only way that our race is going to survive. So the way forward to that, I think, is lightspeed ships. So the risk is high, but the reward is much, much higher, I think. And to me, it seems like the bunker project is kind of a short-term solution. Like maybe just a means to the immediate threat of the photoid attack, and the I think the Black Domain project is killing ourselves. Like AA and Changqing both say they don't like it, and Wade too, because it's kind of self mutilating our society, or our race, because we would never be able to leave and no one would ever be able to come in, so we wouldn't be able to further explore the galaxy because of it.
Seems like we'd buy ourselves a lot of time with the bunker project, though. Like, I mean, it seems like like the bunker project represents humanity kind of like learning to, like, humanity has basically decoupled itself from reliance on the sun's energy to survive, like in the
Yeah.
so we've learned to create our own suns. We've learned to process water off of Europa and like use the resource, process the resources that exist out in space from other planets and asteroids, and like it seems like it's like the base, it seems like it established like the baseline like survival like practices we would need. So it seems like it's a necessary thing. Like it seems like we need some sort of combination of the bunker project and the light speeds space flight. I don't see it. If there was no I mean, at least by the accounts that are presented in the book, it seems like we could survive for a pretty long time because we've like basically learned to live off the land, or in this case space, without reliance on a star. So
And yeah, during the bunker project, we developed some pretty cool technology. So they developed the circumsolar particle accelerator, which is able to create black holes. And as an aside, antimatter, but that's that was kind of done in secret. And then they had the project of taking that black hole and injecting it into a planet and kind of just researching it. And so I think that was a side story. I don't know what your guys' feeling on that side story was, but I thought it was pretty interesting. It didn't, I guess, like it led more color to the world in that it kind of talked about like how we would kind of process like such, how we would deal with like such an enormous technical scientific challenge to actually observe and monitor a black hole, and then one scientist's kind of obsession with it. And the part where they talked about the insurance company denying his life insurance when he fell into the black hole because he wasn't actually dead, probably, but more stuck in our frame of reference, reminded me of Memento, where they always like look for ways for insurance companies look to deny people's claims. So it's good that the insurance company is still screwing over people is still a thing, and a couple
yeah.
hundred years in the future.
Yeah, it's good. But yeah, I don't see necessarily like unless the orbits, like of Jupiter and Saturn and all that like collapse into the remaining nebula or whatever, like
Hmm.
why couldn't we if there was no more dark forest strikes occurring, and we've learned to, like live without the sun and not be reliant on the sun. Like that seems like best like hope for humanity's long-term survival.
Hmm.
But I forget it was whether it was cited whether like if the sun did blow up and obviously the inner planets are destroyed, is there enough mass that would there still be enough mass contained in the center of the solar system to keep the outer planets in their orbits?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure, but I think at that point, like the immediate threat of the sun blowing up is like what they're protecting themselves from, and then those
Sure.
space cities could then go out and do whatever they don't need to stay behind Jupiter at that point. Like they probably need to stay close to
Sure. Yeah.
some body that has water that they could harvest, but
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily have to be Jupiter. And they're always making constant adjustments anyway. Yeah. So I had a question for both of you. Like, did you guys like the kind of aside about Galway and the black hole and how that story played out? Because like I can see it like not having a direct impact on the story, but I mean I'm into black holes in general. Like I watch a lot of YouTube videos and whatever on them because I think they're fascinating as just a scientific construct, and kind of this was on a smaller scale, I guess, and like someone actually like falling into one and being obsessed with it. I really like that story. How did you guys think of it?
I liked it. I thought it was a really good way to do world building without relying on exposition the way he usually does.
Yeah, I liked it. It's again, yeah, it has no real bearing like on the overall plot, at least as far as I can tell. Not having finished it, but it was a neat side story. And again, like I just think that Lucia Shin can't resist creating a little side story just to explore every astrophysics cool astrophysics thing he's ever learned. So
Yeah, who couldn't resist like a building a city around a black hole? Like that's an awesome story.
or like well, I was most interested in the details about how he might maybe wasn't killed by them and is just perpetually existing in the black hole,
Right.
and that like his getting sucked into the black hole didn't happen in the way we traditionally understand, is that he would I don't know, just get not disintegrated but just like stretched into a line and just sucked into the like.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's just kind of like touching on like the mysteriousness of like we have actually no idea what goes on in black holes, and are they, what the hell are they, and what goes on inside of them.
Yeah, I thought the point where like they talk about how the even though like the small moon of Jupiter collapsed, it still has like not much gravity, and the black hole also wouldn't have that much actual gravity. It's just more that like the light can escape from it. So maybe he would be okay. I mean, obviously he wouldn't be able to eat or probably survive, floating around and or probably wouldn't have air, right?
Yeah.
So like that probably wouldn't be good for him. But the fact that like you potentially could live inside of a black hole is maybe interesting and when we talk about the reduced light speed black holes. So maybe it is possible for us to live in such an environment where in the black hole if we had sustenance in
Well,
there.
yeah, we have no, I think it goes back to we have no idea what the inner structure of a black hole is. We know it's like
Right.
collapsing, but like, is like, is the matter inside of a black hole just a bunch of atoms or proton, just all like stuck together, or are they, is their structure as far as like the molecular structure of of any given substance, is that still intact? Like, is a CO2 molecule still a CO2 molecule inside of a black hole, or
Yeah.
are all of those forces ripped apart, and like what is the actual matter in a black hole?
Yeah, and it's impossible to know, right? Because like you can't send information outside of it.
Right.
So there's no, unless you actually enter it, there's no way to actually know what happens. Yeah, it's very and not to mention all of like the time dilation and that kind of stuff that happens inside of a black
Right.
hole.
That's yeah. Why a lot of the like fanciful, or like maybe less hard sci-fi around black holes involves like people going into them and then like discovering there's a whole other universe or something inside of them. And
Yeah, just like Interstellar.
Yeah, I thought that was the best part of it. Like I love all that stuff. Yeah, like when they get stuck on the planet and they lose like however many years, right? Like the water planet, like that, and like yeah, I mean that stuff was all great.
I have to rewatch that movie because I don't remember a lot of the details of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good movie to watch, and we've brought it up how a lot of times on this show, as a good analogy to the series. So I think it would be good to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I probably will do the same. Okay, well, let's move on to probably the most consequential part of this book is the relationship between Changxin and Wade. So we start with Changxin giving her company to Wade because Wade tells her that he wants to develop light leadership and she doesn't have the temperament to do it. And she agrees, but says, "Oh, well, if you're going to endanger humanity, then you need to give the company back to me." So, does this motivation make sense to you?
Kind of.
I don't know. This whole section, yeah, like the motivations on both sides seem a little like contrived to me. Like I had a hard time. She knows who Wade is. He tried to kill her and all that. Like why so quickly she would just agree to hand over, and why to him. Specifically, like if she wanted to like go into hibernation and have her company though, continue on, surely she might have like put some effort into finding someone else or some other group and all that to take over the operations of it, rather than like just giving it over to him like at his request. It just
Yeah.
like this whole arc, like both like started and was resolved like a little too quickly for me. Why would she trust him given his history? Why would he, after all of this effort, just also just keep his promise? Why would you expect someone like that to keep their promise? Like he's this his whole character, is that he's as ruthless as he needs to be. So why in this one last moment does he? I don't know. I don't see where the character, like the character development there, or like what his character turn is there that would like lead him to keep his promise and conform to her wishes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that. I do see like her, and like I think she was initially suspicious. I think the beginning part of it was, I mean, it's a surprise for sure. But like thinking back on it, I think, she sees the current era people like probably not also having the ability to kind of carry out such a project, where she was at the time, and she put her faith more in the common era people, and she had seen his determination. Now he pushed the staircase program forward, kind of singularly, through all the challenges that it encountered. So she really doesn't like the Black Domain project, and her and AA both really or really think that the Lightspeed travel is the path forward. But she's obviously concerned about his means to do that. I'm surprised that Wade kept his word at the end. After he had effectively developed curvature propulsion, he doesn't know how long it's going to take to actually implement. But and then he he created a whole military force, and was ready to kind of it seemed like it was more of a threat than actually something he would actually implement. Like he probably wouldn't go and blow up space cities, but he probably also would. Like who knows, right? Like yeah, I don't. I think like Tim was saying, like I don't fully get why he wouldn't just say like, "Oh, I'm going to do it anyway." They didn't put a lot of effort into making him show how honorable he was and how much he was of keeping his word. Like I don't think there's any other time that they really show that. So it is a little surprising that he when given the choice of like proceeding at all costs on in his research, and then also keeping his word, that he chose the latter there.
Yeah, their character turns that just seem a little too convenient to me, or at
Yeah.
least the whole notion of the promise. Like I could see like it would make more sense to me if actually if like Cheng Xin like when she handed over the company to like just kind of gave up, like didn't make him like didn't force this or didn't expect him to keep this promise.
I don't think she did. I mean, like she
Okay.
says, like she didn't really expect him to do it, and she was also kind of surprised that he did.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's a detail that I forgot. Like she was not expecting that. So like it makes her motivation make a little bit more sense given that like it seemed like okay, she does understand who she's giving this over to and she's just kind of checked out.
Yeah, I think she thinks like it's like the only hope really. Like she knows that it needs someone like him to actually like go against public sentiment and develop lightspeed technology because, yeah, people at this point have already turned on it. But she thinks it's important enough to, for the sustainment of humanity to continue at it. And she thinks that he's the only one who can do it. So I'll say like this is, and her choice of ultimately it's her choice of shutting down Lightspeed research. And this is also like the second big controversy about Chongqing that's always talked about online in the forums that I read. So the combination of her giving up on her sword holder duty plus the giving up on Lightspeed technology here, just because. I would say just because, but because of the fact that there is a big danger. They could employ antimatter weapons and kill millions and millions and millions of people if they just destroy these cities. So yeah, those two things are very controversial, and it's a reason that like a lot of people don't like Chongqing is because she keeps making these kind of decisions.
I don't know if she's actually making decisions. Her whole default is to just let things happen until the final moment when she decides to say no and stop any change from occurring at all.
I know she puts all this in. Well, I mean, she puts the whole Lightspeed development in motion by giving it, over to Wade, and then, with that understanding that we just, need to develop Lightspeed technology, and then just at the end, just kind of decides against it, like just got no follow through.
Well, I think like to me, her motivation here is that the means don't justify the ends here, like the means of killing millions of people in a potential war. Like she sees like those or she hears about the soldiers stationed on each space city with like a gun with an antimatter bullet, and thinks like, well, Wade would be ruthless enough to kill millions of people just to continue on his research and not care. So like that's
It's true, but like they're already gambling with humanity's survival by pursuing Lightspeed in the first place. That's the whole reason why it's controversial, whether they're dooming humanity through Lightspeed. Like, why does she care so much about Wade's kind of extreme measures here? That jeopardize even when they're already like kind of past that point. They're already jeopardizing humanity by pursuing Lightspeed in the first place. It seems like a weird line to draw when she's already made the decision to pursue Lightspeed, knowing what the risk is there.
maybe it's like just not such an immediate risk. Like it seems like more of a theoretical risk. If we can maybe develop Lightspeed and only like activate it in a safe distance from the planet, like where you have this theoretical risk in the from Lightspeed research versus the immediate risk of people actually like millions of people getting killed because of Wade actually like destroying the space cities as to show his power and to make the Federation back off, right?
I like this whole part, like even though it's like over very quickly, I feel like this whole like conflict and this sort of, this, between Halo group, like it reminds me of the Expanse in some way, and that like there's this kind of like I feel like you could have like had a whole series or had a whole book just kind of like set around this like conflict and the situation between the Halo group and the cities, and this as like a setting you could just like write spin-off novels about here. So
Yeah,
like
yeah, they could have said proto-molecule instead of antimatter,
right, right. But yeah, I mean, obviously we're nearing the end, nearing the end of the story, and there's not enough time to really explore that. So it just feels a little weird that it's just kind of like set up and then resolved so quickly.
One thing I thought was weird about this part was that Wade got the death sentence. It seems this far in the future that there should be different types of punishment besides killing someone. I know there's a lot of countries now that don't have death penalty. I know that there are some that still do. But I also understand that they needed to have some closure on Wade so people wouldn't be wondering if he was going to escape from some other dimension and come back and be Wade again. So I understand why it happened this way, but it just seems from a sociological perspective that this is something that could have been explored differently than it was.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like they talk about they accuse him and try him and convict him of crimes against humanity, right? And so what can you do? And obviously, he's already been convicted and stuck in prison for a while, and it's not going to work. But I wonder, like, how frequent this is, right? Like, is it extreme case where that he's like the only person in centuries to get the death penalty. I don't think they talked about any of the members of the Bronze Age getting death penalty. They got convicted.
I did like that he didn't go into excruciating detail describing how Wade died. It was just one sentence that, yep, he was vaporized, and that's that.
Sounds pretty humane, at least. At least more humane than injection. Just gone like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe he's a case. Yeah. But maybe he's a case where, like because he had like a following and all that too, he was
that's
a
true.
cult of personality, like whether he's in prison, he's still dangerous. There's the chance that there's, a follower out there that still has an antimatter bullet,
Yeah,
and wants to break him out or something like that, like his presence, or they could just say, okay, we did, if they want to be truly humane about it, they say, okay, yeah, we did kill him, and then just like keep him in a secret prison. He's already what, like 150 years old?
I think it's like 110, but they said people live till 150 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should just throw him in the black hole. That's the
Oh yeah.
that should be the new
Yeah, that's
death
what you should
penalty.
do. Yeah, no, at least give him a chance. At least as a one last favor, you get to see what's in a black. In case there's something there.
Yeah,
You're not gonna be of danger to anybody anymore. And
yeah.
you have an 0.001% chance to live on in the universe inside of that black hole.
And they're not technically killing him, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no. Well, yeah, just like it's not technically insurance. Yeah, they're not technically.
yeah.
That's a good loophole. Yeah, just get rid of them forever by throwing people into black holes.
Right.
Yeah, see, we figured it out. You think Lucia Shin would have figured that out?
Yeah, really. All right. Well, we're almost done with this book. We only have 2 more parts to go. Hopefully, you guys are excited. What did you guys think of this section overall? I mean, it's kind of world building in a way, but I think a lot of plot also happens in this section. And like Tim mentioned, a lot of the scientific flourishes and that kind of stuff. But I thought there was a lot of good stuff that was in here and like said up millions of times. But I love this whole book, and it only gets better from here, I think.
I didn't think a lot actually happened in this part, plot wise, but I did like some of the world building stuff, so I'm glad I read it.
Yeah, it's right now it's ended. This section ends in a strange place to for me, because it feels like so much has been resolved, and we don't like the Trisolarans are gone, Wade is gone. There's a lot happens here in a very short amount of time, or relatively, and it doesn't feel like there's much plot left other than to
Mm.
like, is a dark forest strike going to happen? So I'm curious, as to what these final, 2 sections, or this final. I think we're exactly at 75% of the way through the book. This final quarter of the book actually contains, because I don't know. Again, like a lot of the way this series has gone, like it's still, slightly disappointing to me that we never got to like meet a Trisolaran in the flesh. I don't know if they have
Mm.
flesh. Like, it's just very weird to me that the Trisol that as this are just gone, seem to be gone now, and after being the kind of like, I don't know, the thing pulling me along through this the last 2.5 books. Like I don't know how this wraps up. Like it's just in such a weird place. Like I said,
Yeah.
there's just no like outstanding real like mysteries that I can feel like, well, there's simultaneously like too many mysteries that can that seem to be difficult to wrap up in remaining quarter of a book. And then there's like but there's like too little plot left, again,
Mm.
other than the question of whether a dark forest strike happened.
So would you like to see that the actual like if there was a dark forest strike and what happens like what's the actual like result of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get like, again, that's the only real question left for me.
Mm.
Unless he decides to, like, we obviously like learned about the fourth dimension beings, and does that all come back into play? Does the I guess does the black domain, like, why did we explore all of that? If that doesn't come back into play in some way. So yeah, I guess there's a few more questions for me here, but uh, how it all ties together is a big mystery, because like all of the character drama and all of the interspecies drama, seems to have been resolved now. So
Mm.
like the big question.
Tim's asking a lot of great questions we should answer on the spoiler cast, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. Tim, you did ask a lot of good questions, and those will all be answered in some way or another, hopefully in a way that you consider to be illuminating or entertaining, what have you. But yeah, we only have 2 more episodes to go. So thank you very much for listening. And please check out rehydrate.space for release episodes, reading lists, pronunciation guides, and all the other stuff we put on there. And please leave comments by emailing us at rehydrate@fastmail.com or on Twitter at rehydratepod. And join us next time for Season 5, Episode 6, Singer, covering Part 5 of Descend by Leo Sishin.